water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. God's gonna trouble the water. See that child all dressed in red. He's gonna trouble the water. Must be the children that Moses led. He's gonna trouble the water. He's gonna lead us on better green. He's gonna trouble the water. Follow me down the Jordan stream. He's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Who's that girl all dressed in white? He's gonna trouble the water. Must be the children of the Israelites. He's gonna trouble the water. And I looked over yonder, what did I see? He's gonna trouble the water. Band of angels coming for me. He's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Oh, wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. God's gonna trouble the water. God's gonna trouble the water.
I'm going to tell you a story about a professor of theology and ethics at Fuller Theological Seminary. His name is Lewis Meads. He wrote a book called A Pretty Good Person. And this man, this professor, one day woke up in a very cold Minnesota morning in his apartment. It was December. And he completely collapsed. He said, my lungs, it turned out, had been spattered by a buckshot of blood clots. And for a couple of days, I tilted in death's direction. He said, 4 days later, I woke up, and before me was a man named Hans Ingham, a Norwegian professor, who leaned over my bed and congratulated me on the 20-to-1 odds of surviving this. He said it hit him really hard. And at 2 o'clock in the morning the following day, he was overcome by gratitude. He could not help but saying, "Thank you, God. Thank you to the Lord Almighty for this amazing body. I am so grateful I get the chance to live another day. I am so grateful that my body is healing itself. I'm so grateful for the care I have received, and I get the opportunity to breathe another breath. Now, Lewis Smedes had a tragic experience that happened in his life and made him awaken to the beauty of life. Now, I can't tell you how many people have come to me and they've had a car accident or a cancer, a brush with cancer, or some kind of tragedy that helped them realize how sacred and holy this life is. But do you really have to have that to realize how beautiful this world is? Do you need to have some kind of tragedy to wake up? Some of you in this room and online, you've had that and you know what I'm talking about. And maybe some of you have forgotten. So I'm here to remind you today to be grateful, because this life is so beautiful. It is so sacred. It is so magnificent and miraculous. And sometimes I forget. So this talk isn't just for me. It's for you. It's for you and it's for me. Because I need to remind myself the beauty of what is around me. So I'm going to encourage you to do 3 things this week. The first thing is to be grateful for everything. And I just did this as a little practice exercise this morning because I wanted to talk to you about it. And what I was thinking about as I was laying in bed in the morning, first of all, I have a cat who after my alarm goes off, she always waits. It's so sweet. Once my alarm goes off, I have a cat who's purring on top of me, and she's so adorable, and I'm so grateful for my cat. But then I'm also laying down in this memory foam bed, which also has a memory foam pillow, and then I have a memory foam body pillow. And I am so grateful. Who invented memory foam? It's amazing. And then who made the sheets for my bed? And I start thinking about the little things that just in that 10 minutes at the beginning of my day, how many people had to invest their creative energy and their output, and the people who manufactured the sheets and drove them to the place where I bought them from, and how many people conspired for this delightful waking up in the morning that I had. And whenever I go to brush my teeth, the water that's coming out of my faucet, how did it get there? How many people worked to get that water clean, pumped over to me? Who created the infrastructure in the city in order to have it come to me where I could just turn it on? How many people are working at the water company? So many people have conspired for just my few minutes of morning bliss. And I'm so grateful. So I would encourage you every day this week, just take a little time of the day to acknowledge and appreciate everything. Everything. I mean, when you look around, how many people conspired for you to have what you have? For me driving the car, I was driving my car and I'm like, who invented my Mazda 6 hatchback? I love it, by the way. It's red, it's out there, it's very cute. I love my car. Who designed it? Who dreamed it up? I've had it for like 13 years. Who did that? I'm so grateful. What about the people at the gas station? Who created gas stations? Who created the roads? All of these people conspired for the goodness of my life right now, and I'm so grateful. So that's the first thing I want to encourage you to do, is to just see how amazing life is, how fortunate we are to have so many people supporting us continuously every moment of the day. Eckhart Tolle says, acknowledging the good that you already have in your life is the foundation for all abundance. Researchers say that negative emotions such as fear, envy, greed, entitlement, resentment, anger, regret. They block our gratitude. And when we're simmering in those emotions, we create self-alienation. And I mean the big S self, like the God self, the infinite self. We alienate ourselves from that. When we're stewing in that, we experience broken relationships and profound unhappiness. Christians call it the 7 deadly sins. Now, it's not a sin because you're going to hell for it. It's a sin because you missed the mark and you're experiencing hell. You're not going to some place that you aren't already at. You're in the experience of hell. But you don't have to be there forever. Grateful people tend to be satisfied with what they have and are less likely to succumb to negative emotions. I just watched The Princess Bride again, one of my favorite movies. And I love The Princess Bride, especially, and even if you read the book is even better. But they have this whole thing on the pit of despair. And when I am really down, I just feel like that's where I'm at. I'm in the pit of despair. And the thing is that I don't have to live in the pit of despair. Bad things happen to good people. Challenging things happen to good people. But if I'm in the pit of despair and I recognize that I'm in the pit of despair, I have a choice to start looking for the good in the situation. Now, if I'm so far down the pit where I can't even find that, which has happened to me, I ask for help. So I would encourage you, if you came here because you were looking for some uplift, or you're online, you're looking for some support, I would encourage you to reach out for help. We have practitioners who pray every Sunday after every service, in person and online. I would encourage you to find a therapist or reach out to a friend, because sometimes we need somebody else to reach down to pull us up. And that's what community's about. And you have community here. And it doesn't matter what happened in your life, we're here to uplift you. That is our purpose, because I want everybody here to be thriving. It made me think about the fires that happened a couple of years ago. There was this big fire that came through in California. That's where I used to live. And it burned through 1/5 of Santa Rosa. Now, I didn't live in Santa Rosa. I lived in San Jose. But 1/5 of the city of Santa Rosa burned down. And it was really interesting to me because I was a senior minister in my former community, Center for Spiritual Living Peninsula, and there was a couple and their child who came to visit, and they said that they had lost everything in the fires. And my heart was broken. I felt really sad that they had lost everything. And the guy was like, no. I was, oh no. And he said, no. We are grieving. We are sad. We are upset that we lost everything. However, we have this teaching. And because of this teaching, we started looking for the good in the ashes. And he said, the more we looked for the good, the more we realized we have been gifted complete freedom, a brand new start, and a new beginning. How many other people get that opportunity? He said, I have been weighed down by my stuff forever, and I inherited things that I didn't necessarily want, but I felt bad about giving away. And all of a sudden, it was all cleared out of my life, and I get to start anew. And I get to create a brand new life, one that is 100% mine and my wife's and my child's. We get to dream it up and create it together. I was so inspired by him. But he had a choice. He could have been living in the pit of despair, but he chose otherwise. And that's what we have every single day. We have the choice. Can we look for the thing to be grateful for? Can we start seeing that thing, allowing ourselves to process our grief and our emotions, because that we need to do. But we don't have to stay there forever. The second thing I encourage you to do this week is to practice intentional kindness, which is a skill set. The skill of being intentionally kind towards others without expecting anything in return. It's a skill set. And if you haven't mastered it, if you're not the master of intentional kindness, why don't you try it on this week? Why don't you take it on for every day? Try to do something, some kindness that you would love to do. Studies show that thinking about, observing, or practicing, just thinking about, observing, or actually doing a kind act stimulates the vagus nerve, which warms the heart and is actually connected to the brain's receptor for oxytocin, which is the soothing hormone that's involved in maternal bonding. So it's just the soothing, wonderful, warm feeling. Kindness also triggers the reward system in our brain's emotion regulation center, which releases dopamine. And dopamine is a hormone that is associated with positive emotions and the sensation of a natural high. So if you want to get high, this is how you do it. Yay! I went to church today and learned how to get high. But this is the real high that our body produces without us doing anything except an act of kindness. Can you imagine? It's free, it feels good, and not only that, it's contagious. Because people witnessing an act of kindness actually have their hearts open as well. It releases the same thing in their brain too. It's amazing. There's a story told by Jack Kornfield about an American soldier. And he said that, this is somebody he had the privilege of learning from, said an American soldier who had been to Iraq was taking a mindfulness-based stress reduction course. So that's MBSR, if you've heard of that. It was offered by the Army upon his return. And he had noticed that he had been struggling with anger, and he was very critical of others. He was very upset about how others were behaving. And so a few weeks in the course, he started learning about the Buddhist practice of the loving kindness meditation, which you practice sending goodwill towards yourself, and you practice sending goodwill towards others around you. And it's a practice. And one day, the soldier was waiting to pay for some things at a grocery store, and he was in line. Now, he was in the express line. I don't know if you've been in the express line, and then the person in front of you definitely does not have 10 items or less. So that's where he was. He was in the express line. The woman in front of him definitely did not have, she had like 12 items. And to top it off, she had this little toddler baby. And the little toddler baby was making all this noise, and then she handed the baby to the cashier, and the cashier was like playing with the baby and having fun and loving up the baby and just taking her time and just doing all of the stuff, and then she gave the baby back. And so the soldier was starting to, he was recognizing his upset. He was recognizing that they were taking a long time, that they were really just paying attention to their own world, that they weren't paying attention to him, and that he hated waiting. He hated when people didn't follow the rules, and why were they so slow? All of these things went on through his head. Maybe you've experienced that. And he decided to practice his loving kindness meditation. And even though he was resistant in his body and he was not happy about it, he decided to focus on what could possibly be good about this situation. And when he got to the register, he decided to think about, well, the baby was cute. So he would acknowledge the cuteness of the baby. So he moved up to the register and he acknowledged how cute the baby was to the woman who was behind the register. And she said, "Oh, do you really think so?" And he said, "Yeah, that was a cute baby." And she said, "Oh my God, that's my son. And my husband just died in Iraq 2 weeks ago. And unfortunately, I don't have any time to spend with my son, so my mother brings him to the grocery store every day so I at least get a couple minutes of joy with my son. And of course, his heart melted. And he was so grateful that he hadn't told them off and instead had said something kind to her because she was going through a hard time, and that was her only time of joy during the day. And this is the impact of a little act of kindness. I would encourage you to practice small acts of kindness every day because it'll make you feel good, but it'll also make the other person feel good. The third thing I want to encourage you to do is to give without strings attached. So we are entering into the holiday season. It has begun. We are here and ready to be in the gift-giving part of the year. And I wonder, when you give a gift, do you actually give the gift fully and freely and joyfully? Or do you have strings attached? Now, I ask that because in my family, historically, there has been strings attached. And I had to learn about this idea of giving freely and receiving freely without strings attached. And I figured it out because I was reading this book called, it's Grateful, is the name of the book, by Diana Butler Bass. And she said, for eons, gratitude has been understood as an obligation to repay a favor or a gift. It was basically an exchange of a benefactor and a beneficiary. And so basically, gratitude was formulated in this way. Benefactor gives gift to beneficiary. Beneficiary gives back a favor or a token in return. So that's reciprocity. So that's the idea of doing something for somebody who's done something to you. But it was also a moral obligation. Basically, it was a duty. It was a duty. Now, does duty kind of inspire freedom and joy within you? Well, I can tell you I've had that experience of duty. And I learned that this type of what was expected as gratitude was operated in the spheres of politics and society, and it meant that you were a virtuous person if you practiced this reciprocity. Because ingratitude, so basically the failure to respond to it, was showing that you didn't have virtue or value, and you were violating social norms. And so this basically created a quid pro quo, and it was used as a form of power and control for people. So power and control is not the form of gratitude we're talking about. Actually, I want to destroy and uncreate this whole idea. And it came from this kind of idea with kings, right? The kings and their kingdom. And, or in many capitalist societies, I do something for you, you owe me a favor, right? You owe me something back. And the returning the favor is a duty and a requirement. So I have inherited this belief system, and I know that, and it's taken me years to undo this feeling that I have to do something instead of just enjoying the receiving and the joy of getting a gift or giving a gift freely. I've had to cut those ties. And those ties came from, like the king, who gave his subjects the gifts of protection and provision, and subjects were required to give loyalty and taxes. And if you didn't return this favor, then basically you would be thrown in the brig for treason, you would be punished by enslavement or prison, exile, death, so you better show your gratitude to your king, right? Now, all of this is like consciousness and belief systems that have been inherited into our society where there's been this kind of like requirement. But that's not the true sense of gratitude. There is no requirement. It is a free exchange. So if you look back at the word gratia, which is the Latin word, meaning pleasing quality or goodwill, it's actually the Latin translation of the Greek word charis, and charis was the name of one of the three goddesses, collectively called the Charites, or the three graces. Now, the three graces were these goddesses that bestowed joy and beauty and festivity and song everywhere they went. And they gave it freely. They had no expectation. They just wanted to give this expression to everybody they came in contact with. That was the essence of the Latin form of the word. But it's gotten kind of screwed up in our history to where it meant an obligation instead of this essence of joy. So the true sense of gratitude comes from the idea that it arises in our hearts. And there's a pleasure that comes around it when we feel that emotion. And there's an idea that it's a part of an experience of joy and pleasure and wonder and awe. That is a sense of gratitude. So can we be in that state, both when we give and when we receive, where a gift is truly a gift? It's not something, not a debt to be distributed or some expectation that you have to do something. It's a free expression. Think of the sun. The sun gives to us freely. There's no expectation from the sun that we give back to it. It just shines its light and gives to us freely. Now imagine if we all practiced gratitude like that. Imagine if we were like the sun with freedom and joy, giving our light, bestowing our love on people without any expectation of anything in return. And the same thing when we receive freely and fully, just to experience the joy of receiving. Can you imagine what this world would be like? I think it would be a little more godlike, because I know that this is how God gives to all of us. There is no expectation. There are no strings attached. It's just the joy of giving. So I would encourage you to practice those three things this week. The first one, being grateful for everything. Perhaps you don't need to have a life or death experience to be grateful. Maybe you can take this moment now to really acknowledge the magnificence of how you're being supported in this world. And the second thing is to practice intentional kindness. What would it look like if you just did one little act today, one little act tomorrow, maybe 5 acts, maybe 10, just a little something. Cultivate that skill set. Become a master of intentional kindness. And the third thing is, what if we all gave without strings attached? Consider the sun. What if we all joyfully, with deep and abiding pleasure, just gave for the pleasure of giving? What would this world be like? That's the world I want to live in. And so I invite you to join me in that. Are you in? You're in? All right. Well, I know that today, right here, right now, that this is the day that we have made collectively together. And I do rejoice and am glad in it. So let us pray. Infinite presence, light, love, I fully receive the gifts of the universe, saying yes to all that comes to me, and I joyfully feel the love in my heart with deep and abiding appreciation, saying yes, I accept I am worthy. I am love. I am loved. And as I accept that for myself, I accept that for each and every person here, that we are the receivers of the infinite bounty of the universe. And so today I wake up to that bounty. Today I see with new eyes the magnificence of what continues to be given to me today. I am in awe of the infinite. And I know today that I choose to be utilized by this divine love, utilized by the divine presence, that God expression, in order to be a presence of love out into the universe. Today I know I practice intentional acts of kindness, and I spread that love out. I'm so grateful to know that everything I'm in participation with is a co-creation of a greater good, a greater recognition of the divine. And as I see that today, I so gratefully give of myself. I give of my creativity. I give of my joy. I give of my pleasure. I give of my gratitude to know this is a sacred and holy place to be. This is a day to be grateful for. This is a place to be grateful for. Right where I'm at, right where I'm in. I am so grateful, and so I surrender to the gratitude, to that feeling, to that emotion that warms me from the inside out. And I release this prayer, knowing it's already done. It has changed us at depth today, and for that I'm grateful, and so it is.